It's visible now.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So yeah, good evening, everyone. My name is Rohith, and I am a second year MBA student at IIM Bangalore. Like most of you, I am a graduate in electronics and communication, and I was in the class of 2019. So yeah, so today's session will be mostly on how exactly you can go about preparing for the electronics subject. I kind of know that some of you are from electrical background as well, triple E. So from my discussion with some of my peers, I kind of know that most of the questions that you get are also similar to what EC people get. That is from the electronics section. And there are maybe some topics that we are not covering here, that is maybe machines, control systems, etc., which might be relevant for you guys. But I hope from the session you guys understand what exactly are the topics that you should be selecting from those subjects as well. So that's a disclaimer that I'm putting out right now. You can look into these topics and just maybe get in touch with someone who is from the electrical background as well. But as far as we know, most of the questions that you guys also get are from this particular section. So yeah, we'll start with the discussion. So yeah, the session basically would cover what all are the subjects that you guys should be looking into. What are the major topics from these subjects and the resources that you can use to learn that. Then how to approach your questions if they ask something based on your grad topics in the interview, and what do they generally ask you during the interviews. So my as far as this particular session is about my interviews, I got questions from these topics. So and I was able to almost answer all the questions related to my grad, and those were from these topics. So what we're giving right now is a minimum that you should be covering. You can definitely learn more, but what you should be covering from each of these sections are basically on a higher level, where if someone asks you some question on the interview, what exactly should you be answering? It shouldn't be very theoretical or problem oriented. The questions will be on a very high level. So think of it from a practical or maybe a basic understanding level of preparation. So let's jump straight into the topic. So first was definitely analog electronics. So here you basically have to look into resistors, capacitors, inductors. How do they work? What are the applications of it? How do you calculate effective resistance, capacitance, inductance? Then maybe some special cases, like you might have faced it. There can be like infinite resistance in parallel. What is the effective resistance? Things like that. Then basic working of a diode. How is a PN junction formed? What are they work? How does it work? What are the special cases? What is a Zener diode? What is a tunnel diode? What are the difference between these? Things like that. Uh, just something in between. So just feel free to stop me anytime in between if you have any questions. So I'm just jumping straight into these topics. So just let me know if you have any doubt in between. Just speak up, unmute and speak up. Okay. Yeah. So then we have basically the different properties. Like if we take diodes, we have seen different these things like Zener breakdown, avalanche breakdown, etc. So think from a very high level perspective. If somebody asks you what is a Zener breakdown, how do you explain it in a simple wordings? That is like maybe one or two lines. How exactly does it happen, and what is the application for it? Think of it from that particular angle. Maybe transistors, BJT, FET, MOSFET. What are the working? How does it work? What is the difference between these? What are the application difference of these? Then maybe different configurations and the applications of that configurations as well. Then finally the op amps. What are the different configurations and its applications? So I added a few links for you guys in this particular PPT. I'll be sharing this across. So you can use these links to refer to the content. That is, I've added some YouTube links and some textbooks. Definitely, analog electronics has different textbooks, so you can look into any of the textbooks. But these are like basic YouTube videos or things that I have found online and what I have used during my preparation. So I think we have covered analog electronics as such. We can edit on the go. So if you guys feel that any particular topic I have missed out, do speak up. We can add it in the PPT. It'll be useful for the others as well. So are you? Yeah, yeah, Nishan.
Hi sir. So basically, I had a query regarding कि ये जो the things like वो Zener breakdown, avalanche breakdown.
हाँ
These, as far as I recall, these things used to have those IV graph characteristics.
हाँ
वो,
हाँ हाँ
वो, उल्टा पल्टा shapes वाला, हाँ.
Yeah.
तो उसका उस do we like really have to go through that कि they can ask on the panel कि you draw this graph and explain कि कहाँ कौन सा part पे कैसा हो रहा है graph and all those things.
So, see, that depends on how you present, right? So, if you jump out and just say the answer, they'll be like, okay, let me dive a bit deeper. But you're like, okay, maybe let me just write it down and then explain. So, the basic working, right? Like, if Zener breakdown, you're able to draw the graph, take time, draw the graph, explain it as such, then they'll not be asking you much deeper into that particular aspect. But if you're like jumping into the answer, they'll definitely feel that, okay, maybe you know more, let me dive a bit deeper into it. You understand, right?
Got it. So basically, you are telling me like we should take our time with the answers, right?
So any question, even if you know a particular answer, don't jump into the answer. Every look for any kind of questions, take your time, ask for a minute, let me know, write it down and then explain. So in that particular time when you're writing it down, you can think how exactly are you going to present this particular answer.
Okay, okay, great, got it, got it, got it.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay. So
Thank you.
yeah.
Mm.
So yeah, analog electronics, I think we have covered almost all the topics. Do you guys have any particular point that we should be adding? I think it's comprehensive. Uh, on a high level, I think these are the topics that you should be covering from analog electronics. Are we good to go? Okay. Let's take the next one, which is digital electronics. I feel that this is the most important of all the topics, because see, even if I am a 45-year-old, I'll know that okay, these are topics that are covered in digital electronics if I'm from an electronics background, and I will know some logic of it because it's not something that is very hard to forget. So so basically these topics, I think for me personally, I always used to select this particular topic because this was easy to prepare and also easy to present, and most of them kind of knew what the answer was, so it was very easy to show that okay, I know some topics and whatever I know, I know it very well. So probably the questions that would come is from these sections. That is, sometimes you might be asked to solve a K-map. A particular expression will be given. How do you simplify it? Things like that. Logic gates, that's very basic. So and, or, nor, not. How do you make and with not? I mean, and with, I mean, said and with nor, and with nor, or things. I mean, I think NAND and with NAND, things like that. So the universal gates, NOR and NAND, how do you make the different logic gates based on that? Then how do you make a NOT with NAND, things like that. So look into that particular aspect as well, where you know the logic gates, you also know how to make every logic gate using the universal gates. Look into that. Then how do you simplify logical expressions? That is also the basic level understanding that you have. Then I feel that the most important topic here is the flip-flops, because I think almost all the interviews, even in the mock interviews, I was getting questions from flip-flops if I say that I'm from electronics background. So look into this a bit deeper, that is, understand what are the different types of flip-flops, SR, JK, T. Then how are these different from each other? What is the application of each? How do you draw it? Things like that. And then maybe on a high level know what a register is, a counter is, etc. So I'm specifically asking you to check out flip-flops because I, at least in 3 or 4 interviews, or most of the interviews I've taken, I've got questions from this particular section, and that is very easy for people to recollect how exactly these work and what are the practical applications of it. So you should definitely look into that. So is there any question from this particular section? Please do raise your hand and ask, or are we good to go? Yeah, Himanshu.
Hi, sir. Good evening.
Good evening.
Sir, I wanted to know latches are important or not?
So latches are also important, but see, uh, as far as I can recollect, mm, people don't generally ask questions from latches. They might ask you what is the difference between a latch and a flip-flop, but the question will be mostly, can you explain the working of a JK flip-flop? Something like that. So latch, the application side of it is pretty limited, right? So generally people don't ask questions, but definitely look into what a latch is, what is the difference between a latch and a flip-flop, but prepare in depth about flip-flops.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. And whenever someone asks you a question about, say, what is the explain what the JK flip flop is, like I mentioned earlier to Nishan, take your time, just ask them, can I just write it down and then answer? Then you can draw it, you can make sure that okay, you draw it perfectly, how are you going to explain this particular concept. And then even if you know the answer, don't start straight away answering the question. Take your time, note whatever you have to answer, and then if you take your time, they kind of feel that okay, this guy is trying hard to recollect the topic, and he is able to recollect the right things at the right time. So that's a sign that you're putting out, that okay, this guy is able to recollect the right things. So even if you know the answer, don't jump into it. I think we'll get to that in one of the slides, but it's just a reminder that I'm giving in between. So the next section that we have, I think I'm going ahead. The third section that we have is microprocessors and controllers, and basically concepts of embedded system. So on this, try understanding what the difference between microprocessors and microcontrollers are. What are the application difference? Where do you find a microprocessor on a practical side? Where do you find a microcontroller on a practical side? Then embedded system concepts, basic concepts, and then think of practical applications for anything. Also think of also cover this particular section where it is what is the difference between Harvard and a von Neumann architecture. I think somebody raised hands, please. Yeah, Rudraksh.
So sir, like in my curriculum, we were not taught embedded system, microprocessor, and controller. Although I'm from EC background.
You are not taught microprocessors and controllers.
Yeah, like this topic
Oh,
wasn't there. So like, should I study it or like it is not even in my transcript like this?
okay. Okay, then you can just, if they ask, but I don't know which. I don't think if you have not learned this, definitely you can say that. And if it is there in your, if it is not there in the transcript, that's a proof for it as well. So that
Hmm.
should be fine. But I'm not sure if you, like, if you're from EC, generally you cover this particular topic.
Yeah, like
But
in
yeah,
my when I talked to one of my friend, like he was asking like whether or not you were taught during my college time. So I was surprised like why they're not teaching me.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. So should I have a rough idea, like a very brief idea about this, and then I can say like I don't know in depth.
Fair. That should be fine. I think one of these YouTube channels that I've shared, there is one where you get an overall idea, and it would take you hardly maybe 10-15 minutes to get the basics right. So definitely look into that, and then you don't have to go in depth. I don't think anybody has to go in much depth when it comes to these topics, because see, think of it as an interview. They'll be asking you some concept. You're just explaining in words. You don't have to derive anything. You don't have to like solve any problem as such. So have a basic idea of what a microprocessor is, what a microcontroller is, what is the difference between the two, what is the application difference between the two, and where exactly are they used. I think everyone should know a basic level idea, have a basic level idea of all these things.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
thanks.
yeah, yeah. Difference between Harvard and von Neumann architecture is also something that was asked to me in one of the interviews. Uh, yeah. The next section is signals and systems. So this is also a concept I feel might not be asked much, but still it is important. DSP and signals and systems, especially if you have some background in this particular area. That is, if you have worked in the core after you passed out of college. So look into what the transforms are. Laplace, Fourier. How do you take the transforms? Why do you take the transforms? And different waveforms. How do you? What is the frequency domain equivalent of it? Uh, you should be able to draw that. Then causal, non-causal signals, basic operations like convolution. So look into all that. Maybe signals like impulse function. What is the impulse function? Questions like that can be asked. So in that case, similarly, take your time, draw, explain what it is, what are the applications of it on a high level. So, yeah, Rudraksh.
So like there are for Fourier and Laplace transform actually there are some functions and signals for which there is some standard formula like standard derived formula, right?
Yeah,
So are we expected to know like because in college we generally used to get a formula sheet, right?
yeah. So
So
you are not expected to know everything, but on a basic level, like say, see, I'll get into that in coming slides. Think of it as an interviewer who has, you know, not been in touch for like 10 years. The core concepts. What would they remember from the sections? Maybe some very catchy signals, which will be like very easy to remember. So think of it like that. Don't get too much in depth for anything.
Okay.
So yeah, we'll reach there. I have a slide specifically on what do they generally ask. So we'll get there. But on a high level, prepare everything from a high level where people are able to test your knowledge or what you're able to retain from the concepts or the practical aspect of it. How are you able to translate whatever you have learned into a practical thing? So think of it from that aspect. Yeah. So I'm moving ahead with this. The next is specific to EC folks, that is communication systems. So in communication systems, what you're supposed to know how to draw a block diagram for analog and digital communication systems. Then we have communication system elements and their functionality, modulator, demodulator, scrambler, things like that. So what exactly are the applications of it, and how do they work? What happens? Then we have calculation of power energy efficiency in some cases. Don't get too in depth into this as well, but it is good to know some things. Then yeah, I've written specifically modulation, demodulation. There are like CDMA, FDM, etc. when it comes to digital, I think communication systems. So I think one very important aspect is the difference between 5G, 4G, 3G systems. Because you are from an electronics and communication background, even if you have not learned this in depth in undergrad, I specifically did not. So, but you're still supposed to know this because it's a very practical side of it, right? And it is very, I mean, it's all around you. So you are supposed to know how exactly does it work, what is the difference between it, and what is the practical side of it, what are the advantages of 5G over 4G, what are the advantages of 4G over 3G, things like that. So dive a bit deeper into it and try to understand it from a more practical side of view. Then there is OSI layers. That's also something that was asked in one of my interviews. So understand what are the different layers, what are the elements that come in from a very like I keep repeating from a practical point of view. If you take application layer, what are the things that comes up? Presentation layer, what are the things that come up? Things like that. So look into what all are the different elements of the OSI layer, what all things come in between, and try to explain it in a very brief and good presentable manner. So if they ask you what is an OSI layer or a communication protocol, how do you explain it? Things like that. So yeah, that is from the communication system point of view. Then yeah, I think we are at the last slide. So what do they generally ask? It completely depends on your profile, right? So if me personally, I did my undergrad in electronics and communication, but I moved into software development, and I was sitting for the interview almost after 2 years. So they know from a practical side of view how much I am able to retain. So I was not generally asked questions in depth. That is, there are some concepts they were checking if I could recollect, but otherwise I was not asked derivations or things like that when it comes to the graduation subjects. But say if you passed out of college and then straight went into a core domain, maybe embedded systems, then definitely they'll ask you questions in depth about embedded systems. What are the different aspects of it? Maybe in depth knowledge on on the domain, in depth domain knowledge, etc. So it completely depends on your background, where you are coming from. If you're a fresher, then definitely you'll be asked more from your undergrad subjects. So yeah, definitely look into the preparation. The preparation level should be based on what is important in your profile. Yeah, Nishan.
Hi sir. So और एक doubt था. So like
Yeah.
हम लोग का जैसे बीटेक फाइनल ईयर में we had this one project on MOSFETs. वो tunnel MOSFET का था एक. तो उसके ऊपर like can they ask questions, or if they ask like what was your project, and then can they go very in depth about it?
So yeah, Nishan, it depends on how you're presenting your interview, right? So if you want to take your interview into that aspect, that is, I did this particular project which was very interesting, and maybe I'd like to talk about that. Then in that case, they'll ask you in depth about, okay, what exactly did you do in the project? Are you a fresher or do you have work ex?
No, I actually am a fresher, but I was, looking to get into the finance field.
Okay.
So yeah.
Yeah. So in that aspect, see, if you don't have any other background after college, like say if you're not worked in a particular company or as such, the questions would mostly be from your undergrad, maybe, because I'm not very sure about it, but whoever I've talked to, they've said that our questions were from my undergrad, and it depended on how I presented the questions. So like say if they ask you what can you recollect, so how long has it been since you completed college?
About a year, I guess.
Okay.
Almost a year, yeah.
And I don't think then in that case you'll be asked much more on that particular thing, undergrad questions. But if even if like, see, it depends, right? If I am an interviewer, what can I ask you questions about? Definitely, current affairs is something I'll be asking you. And if I have to know how exactly have you worked academically, I'll ask you question from undergrad or maybe your work ex. So since you don't
Got
have
it.
work ex, most questions will be from your undergrad. There'll be maybe three, four
Got it.
questions. So it will be on a high level. Mostly they'll ask you, see, I've written it here. Many of the interviewers ask you which subject from undergrad you remember. So in that case, you can decide which subject you say. I used to say digital electronics because
Even
I,
I am also familiar with, digital car. Like,
so then definitely you can, like if they ask you which subjects do you like, are you able to recollect? You can definitely say that, okay, I don't remember every subject that I learned, but I am very confident about this particular area where I've actually found it very interesting and learned a lot.
got it.
So you
Got
can
it.
just bring the interview there and then you can limit it there. Maybe three, four questions is what they're planning to ask from grad. So then in that case, you'll be limiting the questions in that particular area.
Got it. Got it. So got it. Thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, you'll be asked question from 5G, 4G most probably, if it's a hot topic. And then many interviewers ask you which like subjects are you able to remember. So in that case, put whatever you are very confident about. I personally used to put digital, like I said, but you can definitely put some other subject if you are very confident in that area. Depends on how you have prepared and which area you have prepared. So they'll basically tell you or ask you where exactly they should ask questions from. So decide based on what your strengths are. Then have heard cases where they went through scorecard and ask based on your scores. Maybe if you check your scorecards, you can see some anomalies somewhere. Maybe you scored all B and there is one subject with an outstanding. Then definitely they might ask you, oh, you have actually learned this particular subject well. So can we ask you questions from that? So that might be also a case. Or maybe there can be a case where you have scored A plus for 4 subjects and there is one F. So then in that case, they'll ask you question, why exactly did this happen? Which are the concepts that you learned? Are you not able to recollect this? So it can be it can, so just go through your profile and find some anomalies which can be, identified. So in that case, prepare that as well, or prepare some answers that you can give to convince the interviewer that, okay, there is some reason behind this. Fair enough. Then derivations and hard problems mostly will not be asked. As far as I know, it was never asked. And then focus on easily recollectible topics. So interviewers might be more out of touch than you. So understand that. So these are people who are maybe in their 35s or maybe even 30s or 40s. So in that case, how much will they be able to recollect from these topics? So think of it from that particular angle. Okay, if this particular person is asking me which are the topics that he can recollect or which I can recollect after 10 years. So think of it like that and prepare those topics pretty well. Because if you're able to answer that well, then they'll be like, okay, this guy is actually prepared. They'll understand that. Then even if you know the answer, do not jump into answering. Ask them if you can write it down. Take few seconds to think, structure your answer, and then speak. So follow that particular exercise everywhere, even in the mock interviews. Even if you know the answer, take a minute, write it down, structure the answer in your head, and then start speaking in a very structured manner. And this should make them feel that, okay, this person has recollected this in like right there, right now, and then is explaining a concept very well. So you're showing that you're able to do that. Then if you answer it very quickly, they might ask more in-depth questions, definitely. And then if you're a software developer now, prepare, see, after the undergrad, if you have taken or moved into software development, definitely look into the OOPS concept as well. And and the language that you're coding in. Yeah, Himanshu.
Sir, I heard from someone like in an offline interview like NMIMS, don't provide anything to take inside the interview room, and neither
Yeah.
they provide any pen paper. So how is it is it advisable to ask from them paper or pen and paper or not? Like,
So I'm not very aware if there was a constraint like that, because generally in every interview you're supposed to take a notepad and a pen, and I'm not aware if that is a constraint that they give in an MIMS or something. But in that case, definitely ask the interviewer, like, can I note it down? Do you have a pen and paper? We are not allowed to take it, because you are not supposed to maybe answer everything from your head. You can definitely take your time to write down your thought and then explain.
okay, sir, thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely. I personally have in my interviews. My interviews were online, most of it. Some of it was offline, and in that case, I was always given an option to write down my thought and then structure it, because I mean, I feel that if you're just answering questions straight away, that's not the right way to do it. You need to think, you need to structure it, and then only approach the questions. Is that
Okay,
fine, Imanshu?
yes, sir, thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, I think we have covered almost all the topics as such. So does anyone have any questions or want to add something to the discussion? Then definitely we can take it up. Yeah, Yudraksh.
So sir, like, I saw like you haven't mentioned any microwave engineering and RF topics. So like generally they don't ask from this part or what?
Um, I was never asked any question from those topics, and none of the people I've talked to also have been asked questions from there, because it's kind of a niche section, right? Like, say, if you're specializing in that, definitely, if I had taken MTech, I had taken an MTech or maybe a PhD in that aspect, I'll be knowing more about it. But say, if someone who just did an undergrad like us and moved into management, if they, I'm not sure if they would ask you questions from that aspect. So look into that. Like, definitely, if you have time, look into that. And if you want to prepare, definitely prepare. But I personally, I try to limit the resources. That is, I try to prepare topics that I'm very confident about. And even if it is completely okay to say no, I don't remember that aspect of it or remember those topics. But I've definitely remembered these sections which I had prepared very well. So you can definitely answer that like that during the interview. If they ask you some questions from microwave, if I am not prepared enough, I can say that I'm not able to recollect that as such now, but I am very confident in this particular section, which I feel I can answer any question from. So you can go about the interview like that. Is that good?
Yeah. And yeah, one more thing, like during my BTech, I also took one elective course in like say economics, and one course was on computer networks. So and in both of them, like my grade was not good.
Okay.
So yeah, so like, do I need to as I prepare them specifically properly if in case they ask or
So
what?
what is your profile? Like, are you a fresher or do you have work experience?
So, like, according to that form, so like they take till 31st July only, right? So,
Yeah.
like, I graduated in 23. So, like,
Okay.
have been in job like for last 5 months. But yeah, according to the form, it will count as a fresher, I guess, right?
No, you'll be doing the registration again for different colleges based on the calls.
Okay,
So
okay,
your work ex will also get updated. Don't worry about that.
okay. Yeah.
As far as
So,
I know. Yeah.
okay, yeah. So I am a 23 graduate actually.
Okay.
So,
So see, if it is actually your these are subjects that you have chosen, right? These are your electives. So if they want to dive a bit deeper into your undergrad subjects, which is very unlikely, but if they want to put you under pressure or maybe throw you off guard, then maybe they'll ask you questions from some anomaly they find on the scorecard. So these are two subjects that you have chosen as an elective. So maybe they'll be like, okay, you have chosen these subjects. What did you learn in these subjects? So then in that particular thing, think of some high level concepts or some interesting concepts that you have learned and then present it in that aspect. So I found these topics from this particular subject very interesting, and I have actually explored a bit on that aspect. So we can maybe talk about that. You can put the interviewer into a discussion like that. You understand, right?
yeah. So also, like, do they go through our transcript generally, like, or do we have to present them our entire 4 year transcript? What is your experience about that?
So you are definitely putting it, you're submitting that as proof in the applications for the colleges. So they might have it, they might not have it. If it is an offline interview, you might be giving your file which would contain this. So if they are going through and then finds it, then definitely they might ask you questions. But it's very unlikely. Like it depends on how the interview is going. If you're able to be calm, be cool, then they might not be like, okay, let's not do that. Let's maybe ask him questions from current affairs.
Okay. Yeah.
So it depends. Like I said, everything I'm adding a depends in front because it is very subjective. I was not asked any questions in that, and many of the people that I've talked to, they were not asked questions like that. But there are some odd instances where, from my understanding, it's to put these people under pressure that they dive a bit deeper into the grad subjects or some anomaly on the scorecard. Yeah, I think Nitya has.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Am I audible?
yeah, you're audible.
So basically, I have a 5-year course. It's a dual degree, and in my entire last year, I had interned and continued full time. So effectively, I worked for 1.5 years. Obviously, I would prepare as a fresher, but one is it advisable to steer the interview in that direction that this is I've been in touch for 1.5 years or so, and secondly, I like I'm not sure how in depth they would go, but yeah.
So, which domain have you worked in, or like the internship and everything?
Software.
Software, yeah. So, see, your company is in a particular business, right?
Yes.
So, they are going to, the interview would be mostly on that particular angle, this
Okay.
particular business, and questions related, current affairs or something related to that business or your company.
Hmm.
There might be some instances where they're like, okay, are you able to recollect any topics from your undergrad? In
Okay.
that particular say, you prepare certain topics. Like I said, if you can pick digital, it is very easy. They'll also remember things.
Hmm.
So in that particular thing, just choose that and then prepare very well on those particular aspects. That's why I said whatever I've put in this particular slide is the higher level concepts or things that are very easily recollectable to people. Or
Sure.
even if they are preparing to interview you, they'll be going through some YouTube channel or
Hmm.
some online where they can easily read and understand something. So they'll not be asking a question where they don't know the answer to, right?
Yeah.
So
So, I mean, they would be aware that I've interned for the past whatever. They would be aware of that. I mean,
they
those
should be.
details would go in. Yeah.
It would be it would go in, but you can also
Hmm.
state it. You can say that,
Sure.
okay, I have been working for this many months. I was
Got it.
interning for the last 1 year. So
Hmm.
yeah, I've been in this particular domain and maybe I'm not able to recollect certain concepts from my undergrad. That's completely fine.
Understood. Fine. Got it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, Tanish, you can ask us.
Hey Rohit, am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible.
So I just had one question. At a higher level of WorkX, like currently, by the time the forms come out, I will have around 40 months of WorkX. How much emphasis should I give on the grad subjects? And my WorkX is not in the domain of electronics as such. It's in an entirely different domain as such.
Yeah, so in that particular aspect, like I said, no, your questions will mostly be from your WorkX.
Got
There
it.
might be some cases where they'll ask you questions from your undergrad, where they're like, see, in my case, I had around 34 months of WorkX during my interview. So my interview was mostly from my work experience, and on a high level, I did have questions from my undergrad as well. So in
Mhm.
that particular, like I said, there are some concepts everywhere which are very catchy for people or which they easily recollect. So in that particular area, should be knowing, okay, these are the topics that anybody can read and recollect. They might ask me a question from this, so I'll prepare these. So definitely don't think of it as something that you can avoid, because I've had grad questions from in almost all my interviews. So definitely look into it and think of it like we said right now. That is okay. Sorry, I think something popped up. Yeah. So think of it from like I said, on a high level. What are the topics that people can recollect? Prepare those. And I think this particular slide will help you because it is similar to what I was going through, because I was not in the core domain. I was into software development. So I prepared these topics, and we can definitely connect later on if you have any doubts.
Got it. Fair enough. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, Aryan.
Hi, sir. So just wanted to ask that in my case, I've done my graduation I completed it in 2022. I have 1 year of work ex as a UX designer. So a
Okay.
potential question that might pop up that why did you pivot from your electronics stream to something very different from what it is and now coming to an MBA? So how do you tackle such questions?
Yeah, so in that case, you can definitely say, right? Like, so I did
Mhm.
my undergrad,
Mhm.
but my interests were in some other area. I
Also,
found it interesting. Yeah,
just wanted to mention that even like during my final semester, I interned for a company which did UX design. So from my final year itself, I was clear that I'm going in UX design.
understood. So you see, that's it. I think you have answered it
Hmm.
yourself. That is, you were very interested in this particular domain.
Hmm.
You found it very interesting, and then you actually moved into it. Don't like put a negative angle to your undergrad that you are not learning much, you are not interested like that. But
Hmm.
just say that you were very passionate about this particular subject or
Hmm.
the user experience side of things, and I wanted to move into that. Hence, I moved, and then I'm finding it very interesting now. Then
Right.
they might ask you a follow-up question: Why are you doing an MBA after that?
Yeah.
Are your interests shifting? So there are a lot of follow-up questions
Hmm.
which you might have to think about, but definitely you can answer it based on your passion. That okay, after this particular point, I felt that I was more interested or inclined to this,
Hmm.
and hence I moved.
Hmm.
So yeah,
Okay.
take a few mock interviews. You'll get to know how to answer these questions. You'll be going
Yeah.
through like a lot of people will be putting you through a lot to answer a lot of questions. So you understand what exactly are things that you should be saying and what exactly are the things you should not be speaking about.
Right. Right. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah,
Thank you.
Anmol.
Hello, sir. Am I audible?
Yeah, you're on.
Okay. So my question is regarding the backlog exam. So I have one backlog which I cleared
Okay.
in the next year itself. But my question is that even after clearing the backlog paper, my grade is not that great.
Okay.
So how are we going to tackle such kind of questions if they put up certain query regarding that?
So I don't think they'll be putting up questions like that as such because see, even if you have a backlog and you have cleared it, and so how many? So are you working now or are you a fresher?
Yes, I'm working right now. I graduated in 2021.
So you have almost 2 years, 2.5 years.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So in that aspect, like I said, your interview will be mostly from the business side of things. That is, say if you're working in IT, which company are you working in right now?
I'm working in Samsung. My
Yeah.
domain is QA project management.
Yeah. So when you're working in Samsung, the question would be mostly from electronics, like say
Yeah,
the electronic industry, about chips, things like that,
yeah, yeah.
semiconductor shortages. So there are a lot of aspects which will be covered there, and you'll have a lot of things to talk about. So once you're finished that, then they'll be maybe putting you into questions like what is 5G, 4G, because Samsung is into phones. So what is the difference between 5G, 4G? What are the things like that? So you can link your company with your undergrad subjects, right?
Yeah. So I
So
have, yeah, sorry, I'm sorry.
yeah, yeah, definitely.
Just for one follow-up query regarding this. So my work does not involve me diving deep into all these, technical concepts, but it does involve me, familiarity with certain concepts like 5G, 3G, which, all that, I'm all involved, all of that. So
Yeah.
am I expected to have a great conceptual knowledge on these topics?
See, not like a lot of, I don't think you need in-depth knowledge in everything, but you should be able to understand the basics. You should be able to
Yeah,
put
yeah.
out, okay, what is the application of 5G, 4G? What are the differences? On a technical level, on a very high level, what are the differences? What are the component differences? Maybe till that particular point might be something that you should be looking into, but don't go much deeper into anything because see, it's an interview. The question that you're answering is, this is not an exam. That's the difference. When you're preparing undergrad subjects, you're preparing for an interview and not an exam. So always keep that in mind. On a very high level, what are the conceptual differences between these?
Okay, okay. One more query. So in my grad, I think I think these days every engineering syllabus has these operations and economics, certain subjects like these, right? So is I think I should be focusing a certain degree of attention to these subjects, right?
I personally did not do that. I was
Okay.
fully focused because they asked me questions mostly from core electronics. That is, like I said, digital electronics. Because they'll ask you where exactly, what have you prepared, or what are you confident about. Then you can say, okay, I'm confident about digital electronics. Then the interview goes there. Because they don't also, I mean, they're not trying to test your knowledge as such. It's about the interview, how you're presenting yourself. How are you able to recollect things, or are you able to drive the interview in any particular angle? That's what they're checking.
Right. So, in case a question comes up that what was your favorite subject, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So, are we? So, is it advisable to just pick a technical subject, or we can put just economics, the economics subject that I studied in third year? I learned that. I enjoyed it, and that was my favorite subject. Is it advisable to pick that?
In that case, they'll ask a follow-up question: why not any core subjects? You've
Okay.
taken
Okay.
electronics, and then why are you picking an economics? Can't you do an economics major? Why are you
Right.
doing an MBA? So there
Okay.
can be a lot of follow-up questions. So you can definitely say that I enjoyed these subjects, but from the core aspect, I enjoyed this particular subject where I was able to learn a lot, and then pick the subject that you have prepared well.
Right. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, yeah, no problem. Is there any other question, or are we good? Yeah, Aryan.
No, I'm sorry. I just clicked it by mistake. I'm good.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes, good.
So if nobody has any more questions, we can maybe wrap up. Thank you for your time. Is there any other? So we can wrap up, right? I'll be sharing this doc in that electronics thread if I can, or I'll be passing it to Prashant sir or Shubham sir. They'll let you